Hello, everybody. Hello there. I'm Stacey Karlsson. I'm the founder and managing director at Goho. We're a PR marketing and events agency, and this is our final Goho from home. So thank you for joining us for it. I'm joined this week by the amazing Subhan, Uddin and Charlotte Johns, who are both very good friends of mine as well as colleagues, and we're today going to be talking about giving advice for everyone during this time, for job seekers, and best CV advice to try and help you stand out from the crowd and just to navigate the job market a bit easier. For all of you that have joined us before, thank you for coming again, and thank you for tuning in every week to listen to us talk about different subjects. And to those of you who are new, thank you for joining us this time. If you want to engage in the conversation, we'd love you to. So please use the chat box, writing whatever you want in there. Make sure it's nice though, please. And if you want to ask any questions to our panel, please do so in the question box. And then finally, if you could fill in the polls for us, that would really help us shape our future content. So enough about me and the webinar. I want to introduce you to our speakers, or in fact, you can introduce yourselves. I think it would be better that way. So Charlotte, do you want to say hello?
Oh, okay. Thanks, Stacey. Hi, I'm Charlotte Johns. I have been working in recruitment and HR and sort of in the general people field for a lot of years, since starting at British Airways sort of before 2000, so that'll give you a clue. I specialise in recruitment, but I have been head of recruitment for some big organisations like Transport for London, Legal and General, and worked in senior recruitment roles in a number of different market segments. So at the moment, while recruitment is obviously top of a lot of people's lists of things to do, I'm happy to be here and be able to offer some help and guidance if I can.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining us. This is your second Goho from home as well. So we're like...
You're so special.
And Subhan, hello. Thanks for joining us.
Cool. Hi, thanks for having me. I'm Subhan. I've worked in recruitment in some form for about 15 years, first in advertising, but for the last 10 years, I've been a co-founder at New Creative Talent, which is a recruitment company serving the creative, marketing, and sort of technology sectors. There's a sort of stuff I do every day, answer people's questions. Hopefully I can do it on this bigger stage.
I think it's really good as well. We're really lucky that obviously we've got kind of like in-house direct recruiters and obviously agency as well, Subhan. So yeah. Hopefully will be very helpful to you all. And if not, you just enjoy half an hour of us talking nonsense. So anyway, without further ado, we'll get on. We've got some pre-planned questions that we kind of set in response to do this webinar to shape the content. And then also lots of you have sent in questions as well when you registered. So we will try and get through as many as we can of those. But, you know, as I said, do put in the chat box as well if you'd like. I think it would really help us actually if people watching now, if you could put in the chat box what kind of industry you're in or are hoping to get into as well, because obviously it does mean that things are slightly different. For example, in creative industries, you might use portfolios and examples of your work, and others it's slightly different. So if you're watching, if you could put that in the chat box so we know that you're there and what you're what area you're looking to go into, that would be really helpful. So first of all, first question we've got is, what do you think are the biggest mistakes people make during their job search, and how could they correct them? Charlotte, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, cool. I think that the biggest mistakes is that people think that you just apply for lots of jobs online and something's going to come and land on your lap. Because looking for a job is a job in itself. You need to really market yourself. I mean, I know that we've had a few years of sort of comfort in the UK where the unemployment market has been fairly small, but now we're sort of coming into a period where jobs are going to be at a premium. So I think we just really need to think about marketing ourselves. Make sure that your CV, covering letters, any documents that support your application are good, up to the moment, not out of date, no spelling mistakes and typos. All those obvious things can really have a negative impact if you don't pay attention to the detail in there. And I think also do your research is the thing that people often do. I mean, I've sat in interviews with people who haven't understood the company, the market segment, and even in some cases the job that they're applying for. So I think find out, do your research, and make sure that you're marketing yourself correctly is the important thing. things that people often just, they omit the obvious bits.
Yeah, definitely. And have you got anything to add to that, Subhan?
Yeah, no, I agree with a lot of that. I think the worst thing anybody can do is to apply for a ton of job adverts. I think do as much research as you can. I'd say, when you're applying for a job, 50-50 isn't good enough. I think you need to be like sort of 75-80% sure that the job is right for you before you apply. Okay, so check out the company, use websites like Glassdoor, things like that. They can always, they're not 100% reliable, but it can be useful. Get as much info as you can. Check out social media channels, see what people are saying about them, what's going on. Just to get as much insight as possible before you apply.
Yeah, I must say, I mean, well, Subhan and I, and actually I met you through the Guardian, but Subhan and I used to work at the Guardian, and one of the biggest things there would be that, like, making sure that people had passion and wanted to actually work, there, rather than it just being a job. And I mean, I'm exactly the same now when I hire for Goho. I want people that really, really want to work and have that passion. It's not just a job. And I think that's becoming even more important, especially from when I was younger. People did just get jobs, and now it's much more. It's you should enjoy it because it's your lifestyle. You spend a lot of time at work, even if it is in your living room. But
yeah, I couldn't agree more.
You got to enjoy it,
especially if it is in your living room.
Especially, yeah, exactly, because you can't even just get away from it, really. But anyway, that's another discussion that we've had quite a few times. But, so how would you advise people to highlight their most relevant skills, experience, and career goals when they're applying for jobs? Do you want to start that one, Subhan?
I think on a CV, you can start, near the top, have a sort of skills or achievements sort of section, but keep it to, bullet points. I'd say, no more than 5 for each one. That way you can highlight it. Use that or put those into the bullet points on each job. Maybe have, each one. So use a CV to do that. And obviously the portfolio can do that too. On LinkedIn, get recommendations, relating to those sort of jobs or those achievements themselves. So I think those would be the key things to do. And what that does to the potential interviewer is it sort of tees it up for them to ask you about those things in the interview. So yeah, it takes it even further.
What about Charlotte? You got any?
Yeah, I was just going to add to that to say, if you've got any data to support, so the sorts of things that I find important in the sort of perhaps non-creative roles are, if you're a finance director, what sort of size of P&L have you been managing, and how many employees have you had in your team? And that will give the prospective employer an idea of kind of how big your roles have been before, and are you the right person for this role? So you're trying to sort of create a picture of what you've done and what you've achieved. So if you're a salesperson, what was the biggest sales year that you've had, or have you hit every timeline on your project management project? If you're a project manager, that kind of thing. So it's something that really pins down what you've achieved as well as what you can do.
Yeah.
So those are the things I look for.
Yeah, it's information to add context, really. So provide context wherever you can. You can say you're a design manager, but managing 10 people, 20 people, it's different. You can say you were the creative lead on a campaign, but it's at a local campaign, a continental campaign, a global campaign. There's differences to all of that. So take the time to really put the context in there, and it'll give the other person a much clearer idea.
And if you're just out, if I can just sorry,
no, that's all right.
If you're just starting out, I think you need to really position yourself as that enthusiastic, interested person. Put on your CV the things that you've been reading. If you're a grad, what was your thesis? What have you read? What are you interested in? And what sort of work experience have you had during your sort of school and university time, if any? Or have you done any kind of placements or work placements, anything like that might show you're keen and you've got a good work ethic about you? I think it's just really painting a picture.
And just, it wasn't one of the questions, it's just popped into my head, is when you were saying about like giving the actual data, so, you know, backing up what you're writing with facts and numbers and stuff. Have there been instances, because I definitely have had this in my career, where people, like, you might have managed a £12 million P&L for blah 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 blah, and but because it's then a small company, they might say, oh well, actually we think you're too experienced, or you've had too much of a senior position, and then overlook you because of that. So should you be aware of who you're applying to and change your CV each time to be more reflective of that, do you think, or is that does that not happen as much these days?
I think, yeah, you should research the role, and, you know, don't change the details in your CV, because the truth is the truth, but make sure that you're pitching it to that role. So there might be a really good reason why you've managed a £12 million P&L and you want to do something smaller, because that could give you more exposure to different things that you haven't done before. So you can say that in your CV or in your covering letter even.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of work to change your CV for every application, but I think it's about, like, you know, whether you manage a £12 million P&L or a £250,000 P&L, there's lots of skills and experience there that's going to be transferable. I'm sure the same headaches are there regardless, regardless of it. You know, I've learned that. So yeah, no, I think
the smaller ones are harder to be honest, in my experience.
Yes, most definitely. But I think, yeah, it's about going, you know, put those numbers in there. Yeah, it's going to get people's attention. But when you're talking about it, you need to talk about what's behind the numbers. What are those skills? What are those experiences behind it? You know, yeah, of course, if somebody's only ever dealt with a P&L of hundreds of thousands, they might not be ready for something that's tens of millions. But yeah, maybe you can see the potential, and then they can grow into that role.
Yeah. So what advice would you give, Subhan, to someone who's in the job market right now?
I think it's about keep going, and it's about holding tight. So many sort of employers, you know, there's still tons of people furloughed, for example. That's still happening. The economy hasn't restarted by any stretch of the imagination. I think there's lots of companies that would like to recruit right now, but they don't. The uncertainty is stopping them from doing so. I think, you know, we're coming up to August as well. You know, it's summer holidays. How much recruitment is going to happen, really? Could there be a huge rush in September to hire people? I hope so. But I think, you know, it will get restarted eventually, and people will need to hire. So I think don't get too disheartened. You know, maybe stop applying for as many jobs as you have been, and try and, you know, apply for jobs that are more 80, 90%, you know, there, rather than 50-50 or something like that.
Yeah. What about you, Charlotte? Have you got any advice that you'd give?
Well, I think that, you know, I mean, looking at the three of us, all of us have been flexible and sort of tried to look at the market and how we can, you know, tailor what we know and what we do towards what's out there at the moment. So I think, you know, I think there is a bit of that, you know, be broad-minded in your search. Don't just look for one thing, look at what's happening in the market and what's out there, and allow that to sort of perhaps slightly influence your growth. You know, maybe take a slightly less senior role, or think again about your transferable skills, because I think that there are still jobs out there. There are lots of jobs out there, and, you know, I think that if it's something that you're interested in, do some research and see if you could be a suitable candidate for those roles, exactly as Subhan said.
Yeah, and this might be a good time to look at other sectors. You know, I think, you know, if I was looking for a job right now, I'd be looking at, you know, sustainability, you know, sort of climate change related. You know, there's going to be hopefully lots of government investment into those areas. You know, government's talked about investing in infrastructure. You know, it might not be a sector that you've looked at before, or an area, but, you know, now might be the good time, because it's going to get direct investment. There's going to be jobs there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and definitely, I don't know if this is right, but just so I can put my 2 pence in, I mean, I always tell everyone this story that when I finished uni, I kind of worked in a few jobs and I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I couldn't decide. So instead, I researched companies that I really wanted to work for, that I really thought they had brilliant like ethics, values, opportunities for development, training skills, training opportunities, that sort of thing. And that's and then I looked for jobs that I could sort of get into that company and then work my way up, which is how I ended up working at The Guardian, which I loved. Was there for 12 years, never looked back. But I know it's a different way of looking at it, but by doing it that way, I did end up in a company that I absolutely loved and, really kind of wanted to succeed and had huge passion for what I was doing there. So that's also another way of flipping it over. If you are feeling like you're getting a bit monotonous and you keep doing the same thing and not getting anywhere, try and think of a different way of doing things.
Things like the Sunday Times top 100 employers or top 20 small companies, or influencers on LinkedIn, things like that. If there's somebody you really admire or a company you really find interesting, then you will be more passionate about perhaps working for them or for their company. So exactly as Stacey said, it's kind of turn it on its head a bit and think slightly differently about how you might get into a job that you love. So don't be afraid to take one that you might not love yet, in a company that you love, because it's a great way to get in.
Yeah. And also think about what you love. Like, what do you actually love? Because like we just said, work is a big, big old part of our day and our lives. And especially now when you're at home, I don't think you want to live. What's the saying? Is it we work to live, not live to work. That's it. Do think about what it is that you actually love doing.
Yeah, there isn't like a one guaranteed way of getting the job that you want. Another thing to think about is that there's jobs now that didn't exist a few years ago. So keep an open mind, try different avenues to do that. I think for creatives, I think there's quite a few designers and art directors and people like that on this. I think the best thing you can do is to research the people that you're applying to, have a look at their work, and when you get in touch with them, talk about the work that has interested you, that you've liked, that has affected you, whatever it is. Talk about that and use that as the starting point for it, because people will appreciate the fact that you've gone to that sort of trouble to do that.
You can also look at their career paths and see where they started, and that might give you an idea about some jobs that you could get into to get where they are, if you like. So not just what they've created, but how they got to where they got to. That applies in any industry, not just in the creative world.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't say this, but I hate LinkedIn, but it's really useful. It's really useful. So yeah, if you think interested in a company, check them out. How many, where's the design manager or creative director? Where have they been to before? Who are the other designers in the team? How long have they been there? Where did they come from? Where were they at? What career stage were they at? Those are exactly actually the sort of things I would do if I'd been recruiting for somebody. If I'm recruiting for somebody new, to get an idea of what they're about.
Yeah, I've done a lot of recruitment with ex-military people, and they would say to me, like, I remember one guy said, I couldn't manage a project, I couldn't manage a big team, I wouldn't know where to begin. I would, I'd miss all my deadlines. And I said, well, what did you do in the army? And he said, well, I was the I can't remember the military title, but he was basically in charge of all of the uniforms for all of the military, Army, Navy, Tri-Forces in London. So there was like 10,000 people who were based in London, and he would get all their uniforms to them. And I said, well, that is the most massive project with like a number of different deliverables. And I have to say, I've never seen a single person like standing outside the palace, like wearing trainers because he hasn't got his boots. Or like, oh yeah, okay. Well, I didn't really think of it like that. So try and really think of it in a way that is different to how you thought about it.
Yeah, definitely. I was just going to pick up actually, Subhan, because you mentioned LinkedIn. We've had a question. We had a question through asking why in-house recruiters might contact you interested in your profile, but then never respond to your reply. Well, why is that?
Well, I'll have a go at it first. Charlotte might be better at it than me.
You can have that one.
Yeah. Look, don't take it personally. It isn't personal at all. I think a lot of in-house recruiters are swamped. There might be one or two people in a company of hundreds of people. These guys have got, I don't know, 10, 15 jobs to work on, and maybe at least a couple of hundred applications for every single job. So it's just about time. They just haven't had the time to get back to everybody. It's impossible to do that when you're looking at the scale of communications that they have to do.
Is that it, Charlotte? It's just down to time.
Yeah. I would say that what they do is they cast the net very wide, and they kind of stop when they found people that they think are suitable, because it's just not fair to say to 50 people, I think you've got the right skills. I'm going to send a 50-person list of potential candidates to a hiring manager. They have to narrow it down to 2 or 3. So if the first, 10 people produce those 2 or 3, then they won't get to all of the others. And that's really, I think, very rude, and, it feels awful because I've been on the receiving end of it, but it is just a fact of life. So please don't take it personally. As Subhan said, I think that's the main thing. And
this leads to another point, actually. Obviously, right now, there are companies that are hiring, and most of them are using LinkedIn. There's new adverts on there every day. Indeed has as well, but LinkedIn, usefully, you can see how many people have applied for the job. If I would say, ideally, you want to be in the first 50. Maybe the first 100 is okay, but anything more than that, don't apply for that job. Because I think what usually happens is that the internal recruiter will go through those, and once they have a short list of, say, 5 people or 10 people, they're going to stop. They're not going to look at the others. So I think if you're applicant 323, they've probably got the short list before they get to you. So don't apply for that job.
Yeah, and I think the job stays open for a fixed amount of time, normally about a day. So they will do the most of their work in the first few days with the first 100 candidates. So it stays open when they've probably already selected people for it. So it is, I think we could do it better in the recruitment industry in-house, I really do. But at the moment, we haven't yet got the solution to that. So I apologise on behalf of the in-house recruiters of the world.
Well, see, guys, I didn't even know that. I've obviously never had anyone say they're interested in me, but I didn't. Is it sort of like, is it a bit of a lazy way then of just kind of like firing it out and saying, oh, I'm quite interested?
Well, it's not lazy. I think that they send out, they say you can send one email to a lot of different people using LinkedIn algorithm, and it's not lazy because they will have had to set it up and write the stuff like that, but the people who reply first are genuinely the ones that are more interested. So
maybe if somebody's beating you to it.
There was another question we've had, which is about how you could well, the question was actually what steps should I take to make their CV stand out, but could you do something like, tell me if this is an naff idea, if they do get one of those LinkedIn things, could you not look for the person who sent you an email address and then actually send them an email and have something that's a bit more stand out? Because obviously on LinkedIn, the way you reply to everyone, your reply can't really stand out from anyone else's, can it? Because it's in their message inbox. Whereas if you actually got their details and then contacted them and said...
Well, you can attach your CV to it. You can attach your CV to a LinkedIn message and things like that, so they got all the details. But the recruiter would have looked at your profile in the first place. So they're getting in touch with you because they do think you're right for the job. I think it's just a question of timing in terms of them not having come back to you. But
I just find it when I get LinkedIn messages, I get so many, and I find the inbox on LinkedIn quite hard to manage. So I'm just thinking as well, it could just be a case of the fact, especially if they get loads on the move on, it just gets missed. So that's why I was thinking about being proactive and just actually emailing them. Maybe that will annoy them. But I don't know.
That sort of reminds me of another sort of strategy. If you see a company hiring on LinkedIn or any website, and you're really keen on working for them, go and check their own website, see if they've got the job advert on there, and actually apply through their own website and not any external source, because I'm pretty sure they'll look at those ones first. So do that.
And all of that just goes, as we were saying right at the beginning, to show how enthusiastic you are. If you've taken the effort to kind of send them an email via their own website, which says, Dear Stacey, I'd love to work for Goho. I've seen that you advertised on LinkedIn. then that shows that I've researched you, I've researched your company, I found your email address, or I've done it via your own website. It just shows enthusiasm, and that just goes so far.
No, definitely, I completely agree with that.
And just quickly, as another thing, in terms of what you said about making your CV stand out, I'm not advocating that everybody needs to become a graphic designer, but there's like really easy things you can do. Like there's tons of, for example, there's tons of fonts available from Google. So why not download a different font? So not every CV is an Arial or Times New Roman or Garamond or whatever. You could do something different, but just make sure you use a PDF when you apply for a job. So there's little things you can do to make it stand out.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a question. There's a question about boxes on CVs. Get rid of boxes. Do not have any boxes on your CV. They look horrible.
So plain text. What about bullet points?
Bullet points.
On CVs.
Bullet points are amazing. Do not have paragraphs and paragraphs of text. Nobody's going to read it. Absolutely nobody's going to read it.
Okay. And just quickly as well on the CV thing, because we've had a question about some quite young, as in young in experience, with limited experience. Is your design portfolio worth more than your CV?
No. No, they go hand in hand. They go hand in hand. Look, other people might look at it differently, but I will look at the CV first, and then I will look at the portfolio. Yeah, sometimes CVs are amazing and portfolios are disappointing, and sometimes CVs don't look great, but the portfolio looks amazing. So you have to look at both of them. You have to look at both of them. I think if you're a junior or if you're a recent grad, then yeah, your portfolio is going to be important, but it's all important. But in the portfolio, I'd expect to see your final project from university. I want to see some personal projects as well. And actually, even once you're experienced, these personal projects are always important because you're setting yourself the brief. So hopefully it's a real creative challenge that you've set yourself. And so, yeah, hiring managers will want to see that. Whether you're a designer or whether you're a copywriter, I want to see stuff that's in your own tone of voice or in a different, or in a different sort of setting. So they're both important in your CV portfolio, not one more than another. So also from the portfolio point of view, it's important to have a little bit of information about what that project is and what your role was. Were you working in a team? Did you have certain responsibilities? All of that is important to frame what they're looking at and frame the project.
Yeah. And just quickly as well, before we got another question there, sorry, this time's going really quick. Charlotte, we've got someone has asked for some advice for CV and cover letter writing for non-English native speakers. Have you got any kind of advice or guidance on that?
I think that if you've got something like that, which could make it harder, so any kind of, if you're dyslexic or anything like that, it's worth saying that in the letter because it just frames it. Again, it's like that sort of information that could have influenced what or how you've written. So I would say, because I always think I have huge admiration for anybody who can write a business letter in a language that isn't their native tongue. So I think that it doesn't hurt to actually call it out in the letter or in the CV, and very prominently put at the top in that sort of section where you've got the thing, your skills and what have you. I speak 5 languages and my native tongue is whatever. So I think call it out and not making an excuse of it, but actually making a highlight of it because it's a clever thing to have.
Yeah.
I think cover letters. This might be controversial, but
there are schools of thought. There really.
Yeah, this might be controversial to some, but don't write a cover letter unless they're asking for it. There'll be certain sectors, especially sort of like charities and NGOs and government and whatever, that will ask for a cover letter. Then you've got to use a cover letter. But again, try and be as succinct as possible. If they always think, is somebody going to read this? Because if you do like 3-4 sides of A4, I don't think they will. If you really want to have a cover letter, keep it really brief. Why do you want the job? Key skills. salary expectations, your notice period. That's it. I don't think anything more is needed.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. But it should relate to what's in your CV. So if it says in like my CV, for example, if it says I've worked in a recruitment role, then in my covering letter I could put something that specifically relates to the job I've applied for. So I've recruited for X people in X roles, which is the same as what you're looking for. So it actually ties the whole thing together. I also would say that in your CV, don't waste space saying what the company that you worked for does if you don't need to. So don't say I worked at the BBC. They are a large broadcaster.
That's it. If everybody's going to know.
Yeah, everyone knows who the BBC are. Don't waste space on something that you do not need to put on there. It's such a waste.
But on the other end of the spectrum, if it's a tiny company that nobody's ever going to heard of, put the URL in there so people can click onto it and go have a look. But the other thing is that I want to say, CVs, people ask about how much experience they should put on their CV. I'd say the CV shouldn't be any longer than 2 pages. If you've, and it's like the last 10 years of your experience, that's all that's needed, really. You don't need to go further back. That's why 2 pages is more.
Don't put your paper around when you were 15. That really gets on my wick when people do that. Tell me every part-time job they've ever had.
If you're a recent graduate, you know, obviously you're going to create a CV where university is going to be first. You may well have had tons of jobs before you graduated, but I don't think they're necessary unless one is you're really uber proud of one. Put it in there, but otherwise it doesn't really matter.
I do think though, and sorry, I know we're running short of time. I do think as you get older, you amend that part of your CV. So if I'm looking at grad CVs and somebody tells me that they've been in sports teams and they've done, you know, different things, they've done work experience, etc., then I see that they're a person that's a bit of a go-getter. But then if they're 30 years into their career and those things are still on there, then I think they're a bit of a loser. Sorry.
No, but I've had people apply for jobs and they've literally, you know, they're like mid-30s and they've got every job they've had since they were 14 years old, which I don't even think that happens anymore, but it did used to.
But one thing everybody else, I think there's 2 really key important things for the CV. I think one is the initial sort of like profile bit, you know, just got to focus on key skills and experience so it frames everything else. And finally, interests. I know it's sort of much maligned, but that's the other bit that I always read. You know, take some time on it, actually write something, because here you do have an opportunity to actually really get your personality and character across.
Yeah, and I know that in Europe there are big fans of photographs on CVs, but please don't ever.
In the EU, it's a legal requirement to have your photo on here, but it isn't in the UK. But it isn't, and also don't put your full address on there. Why do you want everybody to know where you live?
So you're getting a lot of don'ts here. Hopefully you got some do's as well. We've got one quick question, then we're going to have to call it a day. So we've got Jean Sebastian. Any advice on the best way to use networking effectively to get your foot in the door in these unusual times? Charlotte, Subhan?
So I can go first. Well, if you're really keen on a company, really keen on wanting to work there, why don't you get in touch with people, message them on LinkedIn, or if you find them on whatever Twitter or something like that, and say, look, I'm interested in working at your company. This is the job I want to apply for. You've worked there for 3 years. What's it like? You know, why don't you do that? Get to find out about them. Maybe you get to speak to them. Maybe they can be an advocate for you. Maybe they might even end up referring you. But you can get information like that off of people. You know, on the other side of that, somebody's left that job. You figured out the person who's left, whose job you're going for. Why did you leave? You know, you can ask the question. They don't have to answer, but you can always ask.
Yeah. I think just to follow on from that, be interested in that company. So Twitter is so powerful. Follow all the people you can find on Twitter. Follow them obviously on LinkedIn. Be interested in their website and show that you're interested on all those platforms by kind of asking questions, retweeting things, reading articles, maybe making comments. You know, like I've read an article about and your competitor who did this. What do you think about it? You know, kind of challenge a bit and just show that you're interested and that you've got, you know, that you're intelligent and interested and you're not just sort of sitting there, I wish I could get a job at the BBC or wherever it is. If you really wish that, make it happen.
Yeah. Thank you. That's been brilliant. That's flown by, hasn't it? Can't believe how quickly it went. So, I mean, hopefully there isn't any more questions. If you do, please put them in the chat box, and we can try and keep an eye on it and try and get back to you because we've got your email addresses. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much, Subhan and Charlotte. That's been lovely. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in and making Goho from home a great success. So good luck, everybody, in your job hunt, and see you soon. Bye.